Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a huge stack of sources, really just a relentless flow of high-impact posts from the last, 36 hours? And we're going to try and distill the strategic takeaways.
Yeah, we're moving past the headlines. We really want to get into the why behind some of these huge stories. You've got AI innovation, some really chaotic financial market swings.
And the ever-shifting landscape of platform transparency.
Right. And it's a crucial day, I think, because all these stories are so interconnected. The speed of AI innovation is directly feeding into that market volatility.
And the platforms, how they handle all this information, that shapes how we see everything.
Exactly. So our mission here is to give you the context you need to navigate this rapid acceleration.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Let's start with what feels like a major strategic moment for the AI world. A huge milestone in open source development. This is from Nada Lambert earlier today. We present ULMO-3, our next family of fully open leading language models. The best 32B base model, the first 32B, or larger, fully open reasoning model.
What's really insightful there is that phrase, fully open.
Right.
Especially coming from the Allen Institute for AI. They released a 7 billion and a 32 billion parameter model. And that second number, that 32B.
That's the critical one.
That's the one. For anyone who's not super technical, it just means the model is massive enough to handle really complex reasoning. It puts it right up there in the same tier as the top closed models.
But strategically, why does fully open matter so much right now? I mean, isn't open source always kind of playing catch up?
Well, it's about maintaining parity, I think, especially for Western open source efforts. When they say fully open, they really mean it. It's complete transparency.
So everything, the training data, the code.
Everything. The weights, the full training data set, the code, all the checkpoints. And that level of transparency, it lets researchers scrutinize it, reproduce results, and crucially, it lets them address those underlying concerns about data or ethics that, closed models can sometimes hide.
And the practical result of that transparency is what?
It means powerful state-of-the-art models are suddenly accessible outside of these massive corporate data centers. When you can run a model this powerful on, say, consumer hardware, like an 80 gig GPU.
You just lower the barrier to entry for everyone.
Drastically.
Yeah.
For innovation, for competition, for academic research, it's a direct strategic challenge to companies that rely on keeping all that proprietary.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay, let's pivot from open to closed models, which are also accelerating at just an incredible pace, specifically in visual and creative reasoning. We've got to cluster a few posts here about the new Gemini 3 Pro image, which users are already calling Nano Banana Pro.
I love that name.
Right. So let's start with the announcement from @JeffDean. He says, today we're launching a major upgrade to the image generation capabilities of our Gemini 3 model. Gemini 3 Pro image can generate an incredible array of realistic imagery, complex visuals, infographics, and more.
And this is Google DeepMind really pushing the boundaries of what an image model can do when you pair it with advanced reasoning. I mean, until very recently, these models were great at making things look real.
But they couldn't handle text.
Stumbled badly on text.
Yeah.
And on following complex, multi-step instructions that needed some kind of narrative coherence. They just fell apart.
Well, based on the feedback we're seeing, it looks like they've cracked those exact problems. And this is where it gets really fascinating for, anyone in creative field. We saw posts from @Google and @Gemini app showing things like instant branded thumbnails, product mock-ups. But the real proof of its reasoning power came from Adam Malik. He posted the prompt and the model's response. He asked it, Nano Banana Pro, I need a flowchart for how to toast bread. Make it as wacky and over-the-top and complicated as possible.
A classic prompt.
And his reaction was, not absolutely perfect, but I can't believe how much there's a coherent 3-line, how clear the text is, and also parts of it are actually funny.
And that output, that absurdly detailed flowchart for toasting bread, it's a stunning example of complex reasoning applied to a visual output.
It's incredible.
It didn't just draw a picture. It came up with a coherent, multi-level structure. It generated perfectly readable text inside all the little boxes. And it layered in humor, like involving a hamster wheel or consulting ancient texts.
So it understood the intent, not just the keywords. It combined text, humor, and complex logic. It's really hard to square that level of performance with this idea that AI just spits out average, boring content.
Absolutely right. And that actually blends perfectly into our next point. If these models can be both accurate and novel, what does that mean for highly technical fields?
Moving from visual creativity to pure engineering power, then. We have a really clear benchmark from XAI. This is at Tetsuo on Grok 4.1. Grok 4.1 is god tier for C programming. I built an ASCII Mario CLI game with pad-based double buffering, multi-layer rendering, and procedural generation in about 15 minutes.
Oh,
15 minutes. 15. To build an advanced, feature-rich game with complex stuff like double buffering and procedural generation, it's not just fast. It's fast enough to just obliterate standard human development timelines for these kinds of specialized tasks.
The speed is intense, yeah. But what I find even more compelling is the specialization. Building low-level C programming with these specific techniques like double buffering, that requires deep, granular technical knowledge.
So what does that change?
Well, does this rapid coding power change how quickly specialized engineering teams need to integrate these tools? Or even how they retrain their senior staff? It shifts the engineer's role almost overnight from running all that boilerplate code to, quality assurance and architectural design.
And that acceleration, it ties directly into a theoretical correction we saw gaining traction today, which addresses that exact issue of novelty versus just averaging. At Pauline O'Amiel writes, quote, "The biggest misconception I hear about Gen AI is that it inevitably outputs slop because it's trained to output the average of the internet. But that's simply not true. It's trained to model the entire distribution, and RL lets it go beyond the human distribution."
This is such a crucial distinction, and it gets lost in the conversation all the time. Think of it like this. If you calculate the average temperature across the entire globe, you get a number that might not actually exist anywhere.
Right, it's always hotter or colder somewhere.
Exactly. But the distribution includes all the extremes. The Arctic, the tropics, the deserts, it knows the whole range.
Okay, so if the AI is trained on that entire distribution, what happens when you apply reinforcement learning, the RL, to it?
Well, RL gives the model a goal, a fitness function, and that lets it explore novel combinations within that massive distribution that maybe humans just never would have discovered. That's what beyond the human distribution means.
And that leads to
Genuinely creative or optimized solutions, like the famous AlphaGo Move 37, which human champions just dismissed as nonsensical until they realized it was strategically brilliant, or how recent AI solved complex math proofs in minutes. The output isn't average, it's exploratory, and potentially superior.
Wow. Okay, one last point before we leave AI. A quick strategic move from OpenAI showing how these models are being integrated into just our everyday workflows. They announced group chats in ChatGPT are now rolling out globally. After a successful pilot with early testers, group chats will now be available to all logged-in users on ChatGPT Free, Go Plus, and Pro plans.
This is a direct competitive play.
You think so?
Absolutely. By adding group chats, ChatGPT stops being just a solitary research tool, and it starts becoming a collaborative social planning platform. It's an immediate challenge to platforms like Discord or Slack, where groups often coordinate complex projects. It forces AI into the center of that social layer.
So it's about making the AI an integrated participant, not just a tool you call on.
Precisely.
The speed of all this innovation, it clearly shows up in the financial markets, just sheer volatility. Let's shift focus there. 3 huge swings in the last 26 hours.
Yeah, the drama has been relentless. And a lot of what we're seeing involves prediction markets amplifying, a small nuance into this massive fear, which is exactly what we saw first with the unemployment data.
This is from @Polymarket, a very alarmist headline. Breaking, U.S. unemployment rate blows past expectations, soaring to the highest level in years.
This is a classic example. Prediction markets, financial news, they just over-index on these marginal changes. If you actually look at the data, the rise was a really modest 0.1 point increase.
So what's the new rate?
4.4%. And yes, that is technically the highest since May 2024, but it is still comfortably below the pre-pandemic average of 4.7%.
But why does a 0.1% change generate that kind of alarmist headline from trading platforms?
Because in these volatile markets, traders are constantly anticipating what the Federal Reserve is going to do. So a small deviation from what was expected, even if the economy is broadly stable, is a massive opportunity for short-term gains or losses.
So we need to separate the two.
You have to differentiate between a market reaction driven by algorithms and day trading and the actual underlying health of the economy. You really need both perspectives.
That principle of massive overreaction, it perfectly defines our next market story. The jaw-dropping volatility around Nvidia. From @Kobesalator. Today's move in Nvidia is truly historic. Between $4 AM ET yesterday and $2 PM ET today, Nvidia and V-Day both added and lost $450 billion in market cap. That's a $900 billion swing in less than 36
A
hours.
swing of that size, a nearly $1 trillion move in market cap. It's not just a record, it's a critical signal about the maturity or maybe immaturity of these AI-driven stocks. Nvidia is the quintessential high beta stock right now,
Meaning any little shift gets magnified.
exponentially. Any minor shift in anticipated growth or even just general investor profit taking, and it just explodes.
So the scale of the money is almost less important than what it signifies. What does a $900 billion swing tell us about investor behavior in this AI gold rush?
It signals deep anxiety and herd mentality. The second the stock shows any weakness, there's a mass rush for the exit, which just drives the price down even further. It shows a market that is really struggling to accurately price companies in hypergrowth. Investors are constantly toggling between FOMO
Fear of missing out.
and sheer panic, and that panic creates these chaotic, historic valuation swings.
And that volatility, it also struck the crypto market hard. At What a Guru alerted us to the latest plunge. Just in, Bitcoin falls under $89,000.
Yeah, we saw an over 4% plunge there. It took Bitcoin below 87,000, which is its lowest point since April. And the context here, again, it's macroeconomic policy.
Yeah.
This dip is tied directly to the latest signals from the Fed about potential shifts in their outlook.
And what does that kind of signal do to the crypto market specifically?
It sparks these broader crash fears across all risk assets. For crypto, which is notoriously sensitive to policy shifts that impact liquidity, that fear immediately triggered massive liquidations.
Okay, what are liquidations?
That's when leveraged traders, so people borrowing money to trade, have their positions automatically closed out by exchanges because they can't cover their losses anymore. It's a cascade of forced selling that just drives the price down dramatically.
It's a chain reaction.
A very fast and brutal one. It's clear that everything from a 0.1% unemployment change to a hint from the Fed is just being processed instantly and, chaotically in the market.
Let's move to our final segment then. Platform transparency and this dynamic between online volume and real-world action. First, a major change on X that speaks directly to this fight against bots and misinformation. From @LeadingReport. Breaking, X is now displaying the country each account is based in.
This is a big strategic push from X for source transparency, and the goal is pretty straightforward. Make it harder for state-affiliated accounts, foreign impersonators, or these complex bot networks to operate anonymously. It uses the user's IP address to verify where the account is from.
But I understand it's currently only visible to the account owner themselves. So if the goal is public transparency, when does it roll out for everyone?
That's the anticipated next move. They're likely just testing the mechanism first. Once it becomes a public feature, visible in every profile, it'll probably generate some significant friction.
From people who value privacy.
Right, users who may not be state actors but still value their privacy will push back. But, if X can successfully verify origins, it will provide critical context for anyone consuming news, especially during, geopolitical tension or high-stakes election cycle.
And speaking of online narratives versus real-world action, our final post gives us some much-needed perspective on how social media can magnify minority viewpoints. This is from @PalmerLucky, he writes. Starbucks strike rhetoric is fascinating. Calls to boycott Starbucks in supposed solidarity with workers are trending with hundreds of thousands of retweets, but only 65 stores out of 35,000, 11,000 in the U.S., decided to strike. Nobody seems to care what the other 99.8% think.
And that is a powerful quantitative example of what's called the social media magnification effect. The online volume, the hundreds of thousands of retweets, the trending hashtags, it all creates the impression of this massive, widespread movement demanding change.
But the physical participation tells a completely different story.
Precisely. The facts confirm that the action involved only about 1,000 baristas. It represented just 0.2% of their global stores. And this disconnect is so crucial for leaders and for the public to understand.
That online consensus isn't always real-world consensus.
It's not at all. Social media excels at organizing and amplifying passionate minority viewpoints, making them appear statistically significant when they are, in fact, incredibly localized. For you, the listener, it's a constant reminder that what's trending online often doesn't translate to physical reality or majority opinion.
And that brings us to the end of our roundup. We've covered everything from the strategic push for open source AI parity and, the astonishing creative capabilities of models like Nano Banana Pro,
to the highly anxious $900 billion flash volatility in the stock market.
and the real-world implications of platform transparency. The volume and the complexity of these stories, it just demands quick, thorough analysis.
Gaining knowledge quickly but also thoroughly is absolutely essential when these interconnected narratives are driving both technological acceleration and, well, economic chaos. You really need to know the detailed context behind the headline to understand what's happening right now.
So what does this all mean for you? Let me leave you with a final thought for reflection based on today's AI news. Considering how Grok 4.1 can build an advanced C programming game in 15 minutes, and how Nano Banana Pro can handle these absurd but coherent text-heavy infographics, are we spending too much time debating whether AI will substitute us?
And not enough time planning for the reality where AI collaboration, where the model is a necessary and highly capable creative partner, is already the new professional norm in both technical and artistic fields.
Something to think about as you navigate the week.